We're focused completely on museums and science centers because they have the physical space. So there is, what we were really big on was the shared experience. VR traditionally has been a very solo thing. You have your VR headset in your home, or even if you do have something in, say, a museum or something along those lines, everyone's kind of siloed off doing their own thing. And so we really wanted to capture that idea of a theater. The feeling of going into a movie theater. It's different being there with a crowd and you hear their reactions.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Welcome to another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here today with Nelson Dunk, owner and chief creative officer at Hammer Anvil. Nelson, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Andrew. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Appreciate you spending some time with us on Business Ninjas. Please tell us a bit about yourself and about Hammer Anvil.
Absolutely. So I've been in the video production business pretty much since university. I started doing some work, odd jobs here and there, doing video just to pay my way through school, and started a video production company right out of school, which I've been doing ever since. And we kind of came to this place of a convergence of technology that we thought was really interesting over here, with VR headsets being much more accessible, people being much more comfortable with them, and really, you have institutions, large organizations, museums, educational institutions that are looking to utilize the technology, and also on our end in terms of being filmmakers first, the technology to actually create really, really engaging, high resolution, photorealistic content is been developing and really coming to a head over the last number of years. So we see these kind of things coming together and we think, you know what? I love documentaries. I love filmmaking. There's an opportunity here to bring some high level content to the museum and science center world. And so that's what we've done. We are creating a library of really, really engaging, high resolution, photorealistic content, documentaries, and educational content that really make you feel like you're in the space, in the place you can't normally go. And we're developing these for museums and science centers, along with the technology to have an expandable, scalable VR immersive theater right in their museum in a very small footprint.
Oh, I love
it. Yeah.
When did you do that? When was day one for Hammer Anvil?
Day one? Oh, it's a good question. 2021 was kind of when we decided, hey, let's make a go at this. And there's a lot of technology to figure out. Also, the world is constantly changing. How do we create something that is going to really appeal to museums who are always struggling with budgets and staff and things like that. So it really has to be something that's turnkey. So there was a lot of work on the technical end to figure out how do we make this work for museums of all sizes. And then there's the idea of VR filmmaking, which is kind of a wild west. Traditional filmmaking and video production is fairly mature. There's a lot of tools. There's a lot of software that's been developed, and even things like tutorials and things like that, that if you want to figure out how to do something, you probably can. In the world of 360 VR filmmaking, there isn't any of that. And so, my team, whenever we're working on something and we're banging our heads against the wall because we're struggling with a technical issue, I always remind them, we're the pioneers in this. This is why, because, no one's really done it before. And so we have to create the tools to make the content that we want to make. So yeah, I would say we're been in development for the last number of years, and our first film is launching as we speak.
Oh, congratulations. I love the irony of you being in a state-of-the-art technology, but your name is Hammer Anvil as well.
Well, I've always been attracted to this idea of things that are handcrafted and people that just really put the work in. Even in my early days of traditional video production, we did a lot of commercial and corporate work. There's a model where you can kind of be a bit of a factory where you're just churning out content, and it could be interchangeable with anybody else's. And I've never really been attracted to that. I think it makes sense to work on something specific and do something very handcrafted. And similar to someone like a blacksmith that just they got to put the work in, and you get a raw piece of metal and you start hammering away at it and you create something beautiful. So that was really the inspiration for me for Hammer and Anvil is, we're taking these raw ideas, and sometimes the day-to-day feels like you're just hammering away at a piece of metal and you're like, is this going to actually turn into something good? And then in the end you get there.
Gotcha. And is this exclusively for museums at this point? Any other verticals you service, the medical education world or education in general, things like that?
We're focused completely on museums and science centers because they have the physical space. So there is, what we were really big on was the shared experience. VR traditionally has been a very solo thing. You have your VR headset in your home, or even if you do have something in, say, a museum or something along those lines, everyone's kind of siloed off doing their own thing. And so we really wanted to capture that idea of a theater. The feeling of going into a movie theater. It's different being there with a crowd and you hear their reactions. And then the other thing too is, you have these experiences, say, even at a museum where you go to a planetarium show or an IMAX or something like that, and you leave and you talk about it and you have this thing that you all can say, yeah, I saw this and this was amazing to me. And so we're trying to mimic that with, again, for museums of all sizes. And so because of that, we do need that physical space and the longevity to be able to have the theater in there for 3, 6, 9 months, and so for us as well, we love the idea of educational films can be one thing. It can be sort of your traditional documentary. You have your expert, they're on screen, they're talking, that kind of a thing. But there's also a huge range of styles that we're looking at adapting. We're looking at doing a biopic in 360. So something like you're on the HMS Beagle with Darwin as he's going to the Galapagos Islands, and you're there and you can hear the birds in the sea and all of that. So there's that kind of a thing. Or you could have a journey into the human brain or into the body and feel like you're in these spaces. And so there's a lot of latitude, I think, for us in terms of these sort of adventures you can take people on in this space. But having a focus specifically on museums gives us a bit of focus, but also some latitude to run with.
Excellent. Is this exclusively an individual experience, or any of these museums, there's a room of VR headsets and people are having this experience together, even though it is an individual experience at the end of the day?
Well, that's a great point, and the focus was the shared experience, and so most of the museums we've been talking to are looking at 20 seats, and so a group of people go in, you can all sit down, put in your headsets, and it's all synced, so you're all watching the same film at the same time. The other thing that we've done is we've externalized the sound. So normally with VR, you have the speakers on the little headset. They're fairly tinny and small. Our first film is called Unearthing, and it is this exploration of these paleontological sites around the U.S. And so, we go behind the scenes of a dinosaur dig at Dinosaur National Monument in Utah and at the Calvert Cliffs in Maryland, and we see these paleontologists digging. But then we cut to these scenes of, Stegosauruses marching by, and my favorite is this scene where you're standing next to this giant Apatosaurus, and you look up and you can just see how tall it is, and it leans down and starts drinking water out of the river. And so when we were testing these things on the headsets, we realized, it feels still very individualistic, and as well, you're not really getting that full theater experience. And so we externalized the sound, so we have these big subwoofers, so you can feel the dinosaurs marching by you and hear things in different spaces, all in its 360 sound as well. So there's speakers overhead and to the sides. And so because of that, it does feel, even though you're all have your own individual headsets on, it still feels like you're all in this room having this shared experience.
And on the front end, is most of this CGI? Is there a sort of an amalgam of real footage and CGI going on? How are you guys producing the film?
That's a great question. Our first film, Unearthing, is a broad mix. We have pulled out every trick we have. Everything from, there is filmmaking on our 360 camera, which sort of looks like a big soccer ball with 8 cameras all around it. And so we trudged that out to the Utah desert and filmed out there and in Chesapeake Bay and all these places that we were filming. So we have that footage, super high resolution video footage, and then we do have a number of CGI scenes that we've created that again take you back. In the case of Maryland, you're back 15 million years, and you see Megalodon swimming by, attacking dolphins, and then 65 million years, and you have an Allosaurus coming out of the jungle and roaring in your face. So these are things that our team has created. And then there's other little things that we are really excited about. Things like the 3D scanning technology has come a long way in the last number of years. You can get some really, really high resolution scans just on a phone or with a regular camera. And so, the researchers we worked with Dr. Stephen Godfrey in Maryland at Calvert Cliffs and Rebecca Hunt Foster at Dinosaur National Monument. They were extremely open to. They brought out all these fossils that we could scan, even down to we have this big. They have an Allosaurus skull, which is huge, and they took it out of the case and let us rotate it around and scan it. And so we have these models that kind of float in the air in front of you, and you can get a close look at the details and things like that. So it really is a big bag of tricks that we've been able to pull from to make this a really immersive and educational experience.
This literally is the leap forward from something I experienced more than 30 years ago at Epcot. There was a theater, and I don't remember what they called it, but you literally were standing there, and there were, I think, 9 screens around you, and they had flown around the world, in effect, in, hot air balloons with the state-of-the-art cameras at the time, right? So it was a 360-degree view, but as opposed to being delivered to you right in your eyes, you were standing in a room of giant screens. This is the leap forward from that.
Absolutely. And there's time and place for they still have those experiences. I was just in Ireland with my family, and we did a couple of immersive experiences that were really, really compelling. And so what we're looking at is A, the photorealism, and B, what you also get is stereoscopic 3D. So everything has depth. So you feel like the dinosaurs are close to you. Even the footage that we filmed, we have some footage that we shot looking over these cliffs into these giant canyons in Utah, and you just get this sense of, oh my God, it's these beautiful vistas that we can see. So again, and this is the thing that I'm excited for people to see, because it really is kind of one of those things that when you see it, you get it, and it's just breathtaking.
Amazing. You guys have any competition in this space? And if so, what makes you stand out in the field?
Yeah, it's a good question. There are a lot of, we sort of would put ourselves in the category of a traveling exhibit, I guess you would say. The difference is, we're working on a library of content, and so it's not a one and done. If a museum has us in next year with Unearthing, they might have us in the year after with our next film is called Strange Worlds, which is an exoplanet exploration. You play the part of an astronaut that's surveying these real exoplanets in our galaxy. So depending on the programming, they might have us out year after year if they wanted to. And so that would be what kind of sets us apart from sort of your traditional traveling exhibit. There are lots of companies that they may have 5, 8, 10, 15 different exhibits that someone could bring in. So we would be sort of on par with that. And then it's a growing space in terms of VR experiences. I would say our differentiator would be a couple of things. If you compare us to sort of those traditional traveling exhibits, and again, it's a bit of apples and oranges. You have exhibits where you're walking through and you're touching things, and we're not that, and so it's a different kind of experience. But our footprint is much smaller. We can be in a 1,000 square feet or less even, if need be. And so again, for smaller museums or even large museums who they don't want to devote a huge amount of space, and traditionally traveling exhibits, that the budgets are set based on the square footage. And so for us it's a lower budget typically because our square footage is smaller. So that would be a differentiator. And then on the VR side, I would say, and this is true not just in the educational space, but just overall, there's a fairly, if you compare traditional video production, YouTube, TikTok even and Instagram, there's a whole slew of content. It's so much content. There's just, I don't know what the hours of content that's uploaded to YouTube every day is. It's like the polar opposite when it comes to VR. There's just not a lot of good quality content out there. And so that people who go and buy headsets and there's some great video games and things like that, but there's not a whole buffet of films to watch, and particularly not at a high level of production. And so that would be, I think, another differentiator if we compare us to other VR options. Our focus on that really, really high attention to detail. I always say, we're filmmakers first. And so, our bar is very, very high in terms of the quality of work that we're putting out there. It's been a big challenge the last number of years to say, we want to hit these targets in terms of technical milestones. And sometimes the computer hardware might not be there, or the software is not quite there, and so we have to find the tools to be able to do that. And so in terms of differentiation from other folks in the space that are giving VR options, I think our content really stands out in terms of the level of filmmaking.
Well, your reference to TikTok and Instagram and that sort of, I think it's a million miles wide and an inch deep, right? It's a slightly different experience than what you guys are producing. Now, on the content side, is this a scenario where you guys come up with a concept, execute, and then shop and pitch that film to museums? Or are you also being commissioned to do work for them?
It is generally we're deciding what we want to make. That said, we do have a good relationship with a number of museums around the country, and it's kind of part of our plan is to create a bit of a community around what content would you find useful. There's some that are kind of fairly obvious. That's why we started with dinosaurs. They're kind of it's always a crowd pleaser. Things like dinosaurs in space and ancient Egypt and ancient Rome and things along those lines that are sort of things that we think a lot of museums will want to see. But there might be others that we haven't thought of, and so they know their visitors best and the kinds of things that resonate with them. And so it is some of the conversation that we're having as we plan out our next few years of films is, what do the museums want to see? In terms of commissions, I would say we're certainly not opposed to that. It's not our main goal, because we want to create content that can work for everybody. And so if we create one film for one museum to use, then it's sort of a one and done. And unless they were willing to let other folks license it as well, then that would be fine.
You can't be sitting around waiting to create content in your spray. You got to keep moving forward.
Exactly.
Unfortunately for you, the chip technology is just growing by leaps and bounds by the day. Again, I'm not acutely familiar with the VR headset space, but I can only imagine where they are. It's been a few years since I had one on, and then it was jaw dropping. Also, I'm glad you tell me that people are sitting down with these, because there's a million YouTube videos of your uncle walking into a wall while using a VR set. It's actually no joke. It is disorienting. Tell me what role content has played in the growth of Hammer and Anvil. How are you telling your story?
Yeah, it's a great question. The biggest thing for us is I think education. There is a pretty concerted effort in the museum space to find immersive experiences for visitors. Immersive is a pretty broad term. It's become a bit of a buzzword, but I think the goal is fantastic for museums. You have your traditional idea of a museum where you just walk around and you look at things, and so they're really looking for things that break away from that, where you feel like you're a part of the exhibit. Even for kids, there's things that they can touch and interact with and do. And like you mentioned, things like, projection rooms where you look everywhere and you're inside of it. And so the thing that we're battling a little bit is, how do we stand out from that, and how do we capture this interest in the term immersive without being lost in it's kind of a word that's become meaningless because it's just used to mean so many things, and yet I think the content we're making really is truly immersive. And so so to answer your question in terms of content, there's a bit of a pathway to talk about what does our version of immersive look like, and also talk broadly about for why is that important for museums to look at, and talking about the accessibility of the technology, in terms of budget, in terms of things like a projection room, like we were talking about earlier. That's a pretty big spend and a lot of work to put that in the projectors and to calibrate them and that kind of a thing. Whereas for us, it's a lot more straightforward. And so there's an education piece to just explain what are we doing, and then also the value that people will find. And then there's a business case as well. The experiences like ours and other traveling exhibits are typically a special ticket for museums, and so it's a way to drive additional revenue. And so there's a we're talking about in terms of blog posts what that looks like and how we can make a business case for the museums themselves to create additional revenue. And so for us, it's been mainly in the area of blogs and creating that content and working with you folks actually to do that, which we're really excited about. And the other thing too that's in our slate is which we're having the pipeline is a series of videos as well, which I think just makes sense given what we do. So there's how it is as and I'm sure folks that listen to the show know that as a business owner, it's sort of like you have to do everything. And so trying to roll all of it out is a challenge. So we have lots of things that are on the go and in the pipeline that we're working on, but mainly I think in the area of blogs and videos is kind of our bread and butter. There is a conversation around social as well, and finding the place where our target market is. Typically it's on X and LinkedIn. And so that's kind of been our focus. We get a decent amount of traction when we post just behind the scenes and things like that on LinkedIn. It tends to kind of resonate with people.
I would think that your technology levels the playing field for smaller market museums, because even if you don't have the space for a typical touring exhibit, now a single room gets you to a state-of-the-art otherworldly experience for people, which, I'm sorry, not everybody can travel to the New York, LA, Toronto, Montreal to go to the biggies, but now you can appeal to the smaller markets as well.
Absolutely. And that was part of the initial thought, years ago. I took the family to New York, and we went to the Hayden Planetarium, and it was just an unbelievable experience. The show was top notch. It was so well done from a production perspective, and it was engaging, and it was beautiful and educational, all of that. And my son and I left, and we were talking about it and what we learned and what we saw. And then I was struck with this thought. I'm like, well, there's only one Hayden Planetarium, and it's amazing, but there's only one, right? And most museums don't have the capacity to build something like that, and nor could they fill an entire, it's a lot of seats in there. And so it really, the VR experience really does level the playing field. You can have an IMAX theater, you can have a planetarium, you can have, in our case, it's a full 360. You look behind you, look above you, it's everywhere in that small footprint, and it doesn't have to be a permanent thing either. So to your point, Andrew, it really is, it really does level that playing field. It's something I'm excited about. I think there shouldn't be that barrier. There obviously is a cost to it, but it's a fraction of what it would be to build something like that.
No, again, my first trip to the Hayden was in the 70s. I grew up an hour north of Manhattan. I'm hoping the headrests are a little more comfortable than they were back in the day. They were wood. But I'm glad to hear that they've stayed state of the art all these years, and that you're bringing that sort of experience to people where they are, which is fabulous.
Absolutely.
Look down the road a year from now. What are some things you'd like to be celebrating personally and professionally?
Oh, that's a really good question. Like I said, we're in the launch phase, so we are, we're pounding the pavement now and doing demos of the film and talking about the experience and what that looks like for museums. So I would say a year from now, if we've got a couple of shows and immersive theaters in some museums around the country. That's the goal for sure. That's kind of our fall plan is to really get on the budgets for 2026, 2027 for some museums and really, like I said, get people excited about it. I think that there really is an opportunity here that museums are the feedback we've been getting is they're very excited, and so we just need to get the word out, get the content out there, and let people know what's going on. So yeah, I'd say a year from now, our first film is out there and people are watching it and enjoying it. Our second film should be done by then as well, Strange Worlds, and we should be into production on our third, which we're aiming for early next year. And then just keep that rolling, keep on creating content and creating those connections with museums to, again, like I said, find out what they want to see and what their visitors would resonate with. So that's that would be our professional goal. Personally, it's a good question. And again, I know I'm speaking to fellow business owners who get this, but when you're in the launch phase, it is all hands on deck, all hours of the day. And if I'm honest, I'm in the middle of that right now. And it'll be nice in a year from now to be able to take the foot off the gas a little bit and get a full night's rest and let the brain rest a little bit. That'd be nice.
Excellent. Please tell everyone, what is your URL? Where can they find Hammer and Anvil? And what social media outlets are you using? I know you mentioned LinkedIn and Instagram.
Yes. So we're hammeranvilvr.com. We're on X and on LinkedIn. Yeah, that's where we're at, and keep an eye out for our content. It's again, like I say, we're working with your team, Andrew, and creating some great stuff that's going to be coming out very soon. And yeah, I would love for folks to just sign up to hear updates from us and see what we're up to, and keep an eye out at your local museum for one of our films.
Well, I'm in. I'll get
100%.
the popcorn. Hey, Nelson Dunk of Hammer and Anvil, thank you for spending some time with us on Business Ninjas. All the best to you and yours. I hope you do find a minute to sit still and reap the benefits of your efforts, and continued success at Hammer and Anvil.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it. Great talking with you.
You too. Be well.